Hello, this is Dead Hamster. Today we'll be making a tutorial, a basic instructional video of how to import custom geometry into Mario Kart 64. This is not meant to be a final instructional. It is merely an introduction into some of the tools and the concepts so that when you're designing a level you can prepare to properly set up the course to be imported later. Now, the reasons that we're discussing that specifically is how the courses are stored in Mario Kart 64. Now, if we were to load, here we are, this is Mario's Raceway, and as you can see we have the entire model as it would look here. However, this is not actually how the game uses it. Instead, there are 17 different sections. Each one has 4 views, a north, east, south, and west. Now when starting and at section 0, you would only see, facing north, these polygons here. You'll notice the rest of the course is not drawn, and that is to save on rendering and to allow the N64 hardware to properly render the course. Now if the player was to stay on these same polygons and turn east, they would instead see this view. Most of it being blocked by this wall saves them the trouble of having to render again behind it until several sections later, when the player is now in an area where they can view more of the course. Again, further for the southern views and the western views, all showing only what the player can actually see. What that means is that as we design our course, we have to have specific areas and sections where there is a clear divide of geometry, and we can break up and move from one piece to the next. Now, to show you a more complex example of what this might look like, we see in this course here very basic geometry, and each area has clear definitions that can be taken out and drawn separately, so that when we have to determine what can be and can't be drawn, it's very easy to remove pieces and move throughout the level. As well for the sections and designing what's called the surface map, which is the actual collision the player drives over that determines what areas to be viewed, to render. Now we're not going to be using this for the demonstration. We're going to be using a much more basic and quicker piece of geometry, which I have right here. So starting with this, we'll first want to get textures and UV map the geometry. In order to do that, we'll use OverKart 64 and Texture 64. How we'll be doing that is using the course editor. How we'll be doing that is using the course editor and loading a Mario Kart ROM image, at which point we will decompress segment 5 and save that to file. Now I already have done that several times, so I'm not going to again. However, what you'll do then is open up that segment 5 and you'll be presented in Texture 64 with a full end-to-end of all the images that are used in that course. Now to actually make use of these when we compile our geometry, we'll be creating what's called a texture list. We load a ROM image, use the course that we'll be using in this case is Mario Raceway, and it will provide any texture that is used in segment 7, which is the main course geometry, and the offsets to those. So for E0000 is the image for the road. F0000 is the starting line. Now what we'll use this for is assigning materials in 3ds Max. So for this road image, the material ID we'll assign is actually going to be 1. The reason is that with material IDs, 3ds Max begins counting at 1, whereas most computer systems begin counting at 0. The software, the exporting plugins, and OverKart will take care of that conversion. However, we do have to begin counting at 1 in 3ds Max. So we'll be adding 1 to that texture and applying it here, an ID of 1. Now to actually get that image in Texture 64, we can right click on the appropriate image, hit export, and save it to a file, which I already have. We will then use that and apply an extremely basic UV map. Now doing the same for the grass, you'll see that I have an ID of 7, texture number 6 is the image of grass. So again, referencing the bitmap, and lastly our wall here. Now with our course's geometry, we actually want this to be about 3,000 units across, and it is not right now, so we'll need to resize that. Actually, no, I am mistaken. It looks like it is the right size. Very good, so we do not have to resize it, which is a relief. However, something that we will take note of is there are several vertices that seem to have a decimal place. Now, when Mario Kart stores the position of its verts, it stores them using integer values, which cannot have any type of decimal or fractional value. So as part of the exporting tool, we'll open that up now and add a new section. You'll notice this creates small boxes down here. Section 0, northeast, southwest, and collision, as well as a section count that will increase by 1 in the x value for every section that's there. That's used all for the script. These objects are going to be parent nodes to our geometry after we split and separate each area. Now this course will have 8 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we will go ahead and add those in now. And to get the verts fixed, we'll assign it to any of these objects as long as it is not one of these. It has to be one of the smaller boxes. And once it is assigned, we can hit the Prep Verts button, not split faces yet. We will wait until we have set up our sections in order to do that. We will go ahead and hit the Prep Verts button, convert to editable mesh, and you'll now notice that any decimal values have been removed and rounded off. This would have been done regardless if you export decimal values. However, you will not get to see what those roundings what changes they make to the geometry. And so it's better to prep them now so that you could see and make any adjustments you may need to in case there are any errors that come about from rounding the positions of the verts. So the first thing that we'll set up is the collision, because it is the easiest to do. We're going to select with faces. This is section 0 here. Section 0 collision, and we want to detach as a clone. We do not want to actually destroy the original geometry of what I've called the course master, because we are going to use this original representation of the entire course in order to detach the individual sections one by one. So when we detach as a clone, we can see that only this area here, which we will link to section 0 collision. We are then going to go ahead and do the same for every other section, which I will now quickly go through and take care of. And now we'll go through and link each piece to the parent node. And from here, we can take our objects, not these, and select split faces. Now what this is going to do is separate each object based on their material. All the grass will be together, all the bricks, and all the road. This is important because when we draw our materials later using the F3D commands, we are going to set up a material, load vertices, and draw all the faces for that section using that same material. We're not going to switch halfway through. So we're going to go ahead and hit that button. And interesting. Oh, not sure why it worked in that script and not the other, but that is okay. We got what we needed. So what you'll notice is that each material has been separated and each object is now named after the material ID. Additionally, it has still remained attached to the parent node, so we are still able to export them properly with the accompanying scripts. We will have to make one adjustment to the surface maps, however. They have an additional value that is the surface ID. So we'll have to go ahead and take a look at our surface IDs and determine which one we give to each of those, and that will be done by naming by changing the name here. So here we have all our surface types. The one we're going to be using for the road is going to be surface 01. Now because it's 01, we'll actually be using 02. And the way this is stored, I need to refresh my memory, is the collision ID and then the material ID. So we will want to name this object 21, and we're going to have to go ahead and go through for all of these and do that same thing. You will only have to take this step for the surface map, the actual rendered geometry, which we will be preparing in a moment. You will not have to go through and rename. For the grass, we are going to be using surface 9. And then for the walls, we actually want to use FF, which will be 256. That is used for solid walls and things of that nature. So 256, 5, and we're going to go through and apply the names here. Now, with that all done, we can go back to our exporter and run export collision. So, looks like it's saved. Everything should be fine. We're now going to proceed with taking the course and again chopping it down into the rendered sections. Now what we'll want to do for that is treat each one separately, starting with section 0 north. We'll take this being section 0, probably the section behind it, and then any other areas we might be able to see while facing north in this section, remembering that it will go all the way until we are facing east, so approximately 45 degrees. So if a player was standing here and facing 45 degrees, they might be able to see this area, and so we should select it as well. We want to include anything that they can potentially see. The N64 hardware isn't really an issue now because for the most part this is going to be running on emulation. We're going to take advantage of the extra processing power we have, especially with a simple course such as this one, and render as much of the geometry as we can so that we don't have to worry about triangles popping in or not appearing when the player is able to view them. So with this whole area here, we are going to detach it to section 0 north and hide the unselected to move on. Now we want to do section 0 east. In this case, I'm just going to include the southern ones as well. Section 0 south. And finally west, which we really, if you're standing here and facing west, barely need to render anything. We're going to keep that simple. Now, doing the same thing for section 1. If we were standing in section 1 and facing north, you'd figure that you could see anything in this area. We'll take the area behind it as well and detach that. Section 1 east, we'd probably include this as well. And it wouldn't hurt to include this bottom section just to be safe. Because again, east includes this southern view. So if a player was standing here and facing southeast, they would indeed see some of these polygons here. And this will be detached. Section 1 east. Now you can close this even with sections added. It does keep track of how many sections you have, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out for now. Now looking at section 1 south, if we were here and facing south, we would definitely want that. And it's possible that we would see these as well, so we're going to go ahead and include them. Again, we have very simple geometry here. There's no reason to not include these polygons. Finally, section 1 west, we wouldn't need this or this. Can probably get away with that too. And that would be section 1 west. I'm going to go ahead and breeze through the next portions and try to get these done as quickly as possible. That way we can get to the further sections of the video here. So So proceeding on to, we're up to section 6 here. I think I skipped south, didn't I? 6 north, east, west. Yeah, no south. Okay. And on to finally section 7, which is the 8th section. Okay, so once we've separated all the sections, we can hide the original course master. Actually, we want to unhide all the rest and then hide the original course master. So what we have now is, what, 24? 32, probably. Yeah, 32 different... Oh goodness, we've unhid all the collision ones too. Very good, very good. So, there we are. 32 different sections to correspond to the 32 objects. Now we actually have to, again, go through and assign each one a parent. This is a fairly tedious process, but unfortunately it's one that has to be done. So we go through each one, selecting each section, and assigning it. It's actually a little easier if you stay on this. Hide them when they're finished. Just work your way through the whole set. Okay, whatever. Looks like I didn't do a 7 west. Very good, very good. continuing through again. Section 4 north. There we are. So we've gone through and assigned every section. Well, you don't hide everything first, except for this, which will keep hidden the course master. So each section and each view has its own geometry. We're now going to again split the materials. However, first, it does look like we need to go through and hide again all the collisions, or else they're going to get all messed up. So we'll hide those first, select these, and split the materials. You'll notice they are renamed just as before to the materials, keeping the same geometry, and again, still remaining linked to the parent nodes. That's the hard part. We are now going to go back to the exporter. You'll see it still knows we have 8 sections. So we are going to go ahead and export, naming this new secret raceway.txt. Nope, that I can tell right off the bat is not good. Neither is that. Actually, that's okay. That's supposed to be there. But Course Master is not. So let's go ahead. We're going to unlink and hide him. much better. That should be fine. Let's give it a shot. So, using our texture list from before, as well as our collision, we are going to go to the segment compiler. I'll have to make a small adjustment. New secret raceway, collision 6.txt, and race texture is still perfect, and it is going to output to this directory here. So we're going to go ahead and clear this. So load up Mario Kart, and fingers crossed. Okay, looks like we might be alright. We're going to go ahead and take a look.
Welcome to Mario Kart. Time trial. Select your lane to go. Select map.
Okay, so things to know. UV maps definitely still not working right. However, this is definitely the course that we had drawn up. We're able to drive over. As we go into the grass, we notice the grass material effects that we set in the surface maps materials. So while there is still some progress to be made, we are able to import custom geometry with UV maps, big asterisk there, into Mario Kart 64. So, thank you so much for taking the time to sit through this. Hopefully you have a better understanding if you are beginning to think about getting into Mario Kart 64 modding, what exactly goes into course creation, and the steps that have to be taken in order to get a piece of geometry set up to be properly imported into 3DS, or rather into Mario Kart 64. I want to take some time to thank some people. Micro 500 has been a huge help. He created the Micro Mountain course, which was the first truly custom course for Mario Kart 64, and his notes are the basis of which OverKart 64 is built on. Additionally, Rena Kunasaki is another person in the past who has worked on Mario Kart and has made some pretty significant contributions to the knowledge that we now currently have. They were the first person to make any type of custom course with their Starlight mod, and again, OverKart again is built largely on the knowledge contributed by those two people. So I want to take the time to thank the two of them for all the work and contributions they've made over the years, and hopefully going forward we'll have more progress made, and we can see a lot more custom courses being put into the game. Again, thank you all for your time, and I appreciate you watching.